All right, my name is Chaplain Brewer. This is a picture of my family from a long time ago. This boy right here is this kid right here right now. So he's a whole lot older and bigger. He's taller than me. I've got four kids, as you can see, and a wife. I have been in the Army for almost 32 years. So I joined as an E1. I'm now a full bird colonel. I used to be a 67 Victor, they don't have them anymore, scout helicopter mechanic. Ended up becoming an infantry officer, and then I went to the good side and became a chaplain. And I am full-time with the Washington Army National Guard. So I'm proud to say, because I was a military brat, moved all over the place. Dad was in the Marines, flew fixed-wing jets in the Marine Corps. And so I moved all over the place, and I always had a longing for home, so I am proud to say that I am a true guardsman. I joined the Guard as a 17-year-old in 1989, if I can remember right, and have been in the Guard the whole time. Deployed multiple times and have had a full career. So I'm happy to be here for the next 3 hours. I say that as a joke, so an hour and a half doesn't sound too bad. As everybody starts to go, really? Is he joking? That's what you're trying to feel me out right now. So I understand how that goes as a speaker, okay? I am a practical theologian. I'm a practical theology guy, okay? So I like to try to, and it's my passion, to try to make big concepts relevant to everyday life, okay? So moral injury may sound like a big kind of a theological concept, big word, or a couple of big words, but I want to try to make it applicable, not try. It's going to be applicable to you, okay? Whether you realize that or not, it's your problem, not mine, okay? So that's what I love. My title here on the slide, moral injury, when good people are asked to do bad things. And I wrote this just the other day. Invisible wounds creating the pain that facilitates isolation, loneliness, and disconnection. Well, and first of all, I wanted to ask kind of what the crowd here, who, not each of your names. You don't need to each tell me your name or story, or else we will be here for 3 hours. But who's here? Do I have counselors here? Counselors. So counselors in the true sense of the form, counseling people through their issues. There could be, so we have some counselors here. Who else do I have? Nonprofits? What's that? Social worker, counselors, okay.
State Employment Service.
State Employment Service. Yell out some of the other jobs you guys have. VSOs, okay. Vet Corps, that helps with
peer-to-peer mentorship.
Okay. Specifically at colleges and schools, or?
Both. So it started out in higher ed at colleges, helping them transition to academic life. And then now there are community and county resources as well. Where Vet Corps is stationed either at rural counties, or we have Seattle PD. There's also Arts Law has had members before.
Okay. Good. What else?
Veterans Employment Representatives.
Veterans Employment Representatives.
DVOP.
DVOP, I've heard that.
Army Reserve up in Marysville, we drill in our building.
Army Reserve, yep, we share that building, yep, good. Anybody else?
County Service Officers.
Say it again.
CSO.
CSO,
County Service Officers.
okay, yes sir.
Acadia Healthcare, sir.
Okay, healthcare,
Suicide prevention.
suicide prevention, nursing,
SCO. So
SCO.
School certified official, we certify
Okay.
education.
all right, great. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is you guys are a wide and diverse group of people, from people that are there sitting across from another person, talking to them about their issues, to a lot of other different things. And so I want to bring up kind of the fact that we've got a diverse group in here as far as what you do and the professionals that you are, and how this idea of moral injury is going to be applicable to all of you, okay? So, this is just this month, and I have, this is the same headline right here, but this came out earlier this month that the United States has recorded the highest number of suicides that it has ever recorded. This is the 2022 number. Those of you that work with in the suicide realm and helping people. These are always a year behind, so that's the new numbers came out. So we got these crazy high numbers. Is that you, Gary?
It is.
Hey, good to see you. So suicide's at its highest rate in the United States. Looking at the American Addiction Center, I found this right here. It says the suicide rate for veterans is 1.5 times higher than that of the general population. Comparing the rate among women veterans to non-veteran adult women, the rate is 2.5 times higher. Now, most of this stuff is not new to you, but I just want to kind of highlight the situation that we're in and what's going on. It says, now this blew me away when I saw this statistic here. It says in the 20 years between 2001 and 2020, the suicide rate among veterans between the ages of 18 and 34 increased by 95%. That's 18 and 34. This kid's 18, you're 17, right, Wesley? This is my nephew. 18 and 34 increased by 95%. These are military veterans. During that same time period, the suicide rate among veterans between the ages of 55 and 74 rose 58%. So we've got something, we got stuff going on. I mean, that's why all of you are here, to try to reach out to serve, and to help military service members and veterans. This is another article I just found also. Recent article says ex-service members have long been at greater risk of homelessness than the general population. You guys know that too. It's another reason why you do what you do. So I have this right here. What in the world is going on? Especially in the most recent times, or the more recent times. That statistic of increasing by 93% is just, it's a crazy number. And I do these slides on purpose. I even preach this way because I'm a preacher and I can go on all kinds of tangents, okay? So that's why I have this stuff. I was just tempted to go on a tangent already, so that's why I said that. So what in the world is going on? And we're going to talk about this. So today, this is what I want to provide for you, okay? Number one, I want to provide some context, or I would argue the context to what contributes to veterans' issues. And I would argue that what we're going to talk about related to moral injury is connected to all of veterans' issues. And I'm talking about the negative issues, okay? And number two, I want to discuss a solution that is applicable and attainable to everyone. Not just counselors, not just people that are sitting trying to deal specifically with some of these deep issues, but to everybody. And I'm a pretty simplistic guy, okay? I was an infantry officer, so I wasn't the brightest tool in the shed. So I make it easy, all right? It's pretty simple. And then the end goal is to help veterans better and to facilitate healing, to save lives. And it's going to be, you all are really good at trying to fix hard and complicated problems for people. And just we kind of Western American people, it's kind of our culture. We're a fix-it culture, okay? And I want to present to you that there's an easy fix to this. I mean, it's easy but not easy, okay? But you'll see what that is. So the end goal is to save lives and to help make. So the context, moral injury. Let's talk about kind of some definitions first. I'm going to show you we're going to talk about, and I do want to facilitate some discussion. And I will caution you up front. I found in doing these conferences, these seminars, especially with you folks, a lot of you, when I open it up for some feedback and explanation, you give your whole story, okay? So resist giving your whole story, all right? Because we only have an hour and a half, all right? But I'm going to try to make this a little bit interactive. So the context, what is moral injury? From the Moral Injury Project, Syracuse University, moral injury is the damage done to one's conscience or moral compass when that person perpetrates, witnesses, or fails to prevent acts that transgress one's own moral beliefs, values, or ethical codes of conduct. And I'll make this a little easier here in just a second, but I want to first talk about, okay, so what are these moral beliefs, values, and ethics? Okay? Moral beliefs of or relating to principles of right and wrong. To make it easy, it's relating to principles of right and wrong and what you think is good or bad. So moral injury is violating your sense of right and wrong or good and bad. Or good or bad. So to name some of those, actually I want to do this first. here he says this explicitly. David Wood in this Huffington Post article. This is in 2014. It says moral injury is the pain that results from damage to a person's moral foundation. In contrast to post-traumatic stress disorder, which springs from fear, moral injury is a violation of what each of us considers right or wrong. It's a violation of what we think is right and wrong. It's not somebody else violating you, okay? It's you doing it to yourself. I'll emphasize that. It's you doing it, okay? Moral injury is not officially recognized by the Defense Department, but it is moral injury, not PTSD, that is increasingly acknowledged as a signature wound of this generation of veterans. A bruise of the soul akin to grief or sorrow with lasting impact on the individuals and on their families. Okay, so violation of one's own sense of right and wrong, or good or bad. So your moral sense, okay? And I'm gonna break this down into two categories. There's the big obvious category, right? You guys, a lot of you are veterans, and all of you work with veterans to a certain extent. So the big idea of moral injury, especially when the title of my thing here is when good people do bad things. Okay, and so what do we do in the military?
Bad things.
Okay, she just said it. Kill and then bad things. Okay, so you have good people that are taught to and required to do bad things. And it is a violation of, and again, don't take the victim mindset right now. Think of it as your own individual. And we don't even know it. Most of us join the military as a 17 or 18 or 19-year-old. Okay? We think it's fun, it's crazy, it's blowing up stuff, shooting things, and then all of a sudden you're faced with the real thing, and life takes a different turn. Okay, so I'm going to make it in a big category. So, like the military. So what's required in the military? And just to give you an idea, you just said the first one, kill. But let's see. In that same article, this military physician is quoted, and he says, "But things happen in war that are irreconcilable with the idea of goodness and benevolence, creating real cognitive dissonance." Which is this idea that I believe I'm a good person, yet I've done bad things. Most veterans with moral injury self-treat or don't treat at all. And so you look at, well, again, that's a tangent, I won't go down. A moral injury can be as simple and profound as losing a loved comrade, bearing the guilt of failing to save someone badly wounded, sense of betrayal when a buddy is hurt because of a poor decision by those in charge, being wounded in medevac, and then feeling burdened with guilt for leaving. So I just want to list out a few of these and get some more, see if you guys can think of some more of these items that happen to a person or that a person does in the military that creates this dynamic of moral injury. So the first one, you just said kill. I guess I still am tempted to talk about, morals. Where do morals come from? We said the sense of right and wrong, ethics being good and bad. Where do they come from? Morals can kind of have a religious tint to it, and I'm trying to show you that.
Herd instinct in the individual.
Culture, what'd you say?
Herd instinct in the individual.
There's some instinctual stuff that happens, all right? But that comes from the way we're formed, all right? The culture, well, how we're brought up, what religion you are, you name it. And it's both similar and different for everybody, okay? So everybody has morals. It doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what religion you are, doesn't matter if you come from a robust kind of a family culture or not. You have morals. Again, the morals are a sense of right and wrong. You have a sense of right and wrong. If you don't believe me, just think about it the next time you get mad at somebody on the road, all right? Or you get mad at somebody at work. If you're mad, you're angry, you are condemning, you are imposing your sense of right and wrong on somebody else, all right? And they violated your sense of right and wrong, good and bad, all right? So we said kill. What are some of the other ones? I mean, there's some right there. The military stuff, the big stuff, yeah.
The medic not holding to the Hippocratic Oath as closely as I should have because I didn't wear my uniform.
And he gave a specific example. The Hippocratic Oath kind of lays out some guidelines or morals that are expected of a person to take care of people, right, in that particular job. And usually you alone, know when you violated those things, okay? You didn't do it well enough, or you know, whatever it is, okay? So he just gave the idea of Hippocratic oath. Kill. I like the idea of being medevaced out, and somebody has guilt because, you know, they're in a safe place, they're back home while their unit is still overseas. So I like that one. Yeah, I saw a raised hand. Yes.
I see a lot related to inaction, related to like the rule of engagement or what they should have done or wish they could have done to prevent.
All right, rules of engagement or inaction. I mean, that's a good one because, again, kind of like the Hippocratic oath, only you know what you did or didn't do. But yet you now are struggling with that decision because you know, because you violated your sense of right and wrong. Whether you decided to fire when maybe you thought you shouldn't have, or you didn't fire and now you're going, I should have. Okay, so that's a great one. Yes.
Kind of similar, I guess, to be not actually being in combat, but being in the service.
Okay.
Kind of, you feel bad that you didn't get actually engaged, I guess.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, as an infantry guy,
Who doesn't get to fight?
okay, who doesn't get to fight? Again, you can peel the onion layer back in a lot of different ways in which a person could, what's their experience with that as it relates to moral injury. But yeah, that's a good one. Yes.
For lack of better words, like the afterlife after deployment, like coming back to the U.S., knowing what is over wherever you were deployed.
Okay. After deployment issues. And again, we could find, we could list 50 things out right there, right? I even thought about that too most recently. I mean, I've become a hardened individual due to, a lot of the things that I've either seen, the memorial ceremonies I've had to conduct, the people I've had to inform of death. I'll get you here in a second. So I've become hardened. I was kind of hardened anyways before I'm not your normal chaplain. But what really hit me hard was the withdrawal from Afghanistan and then the terrorist attack that happened at the airport. I mean, I've become crusty and hardened with death and violence and those kinds of things. And I didn't even know anybody in that particular incident. But the way that happened, and then the after piece too, just kind of, and I go on a tangent with this also, with believing that I've dedicated my life for a certain cause, and then now questioning that, whether it's because policies change or whatever, and they do all the time. Nations change policies and direction, and that happens, but the veteran is left with, wait a minute, you're telling me I dedicated my life to what I thought was a righteous, moral cause. And like for me, one of the things I struggle with is, hey, I left kids for multiple years. Okay, direct impact, not necessarily terrible, but other things that I've regretted, and I've second guessed. Hey, was it worth that? Is it worth it for them? So the after deployment, the leaving family, the things like that. Yes, sir.
Hazing.
Hazing?
Yes.
Hey, so like the military stuff within the military context, the units, hazing, okay?
Yep.
Is there another word we could?
No, I think that's the word, sir.
What's that?
I said that's the word, sir.
Okay, good. No, yeah, you're right. I mean, I've been through some things myself, not just as a recipient. Okay, so hazing. But again, the point is not the actual action. It could have been somewhat innocent in the sense that didn't hurt somebody. I'm not saying that. I don't want to debate what it was. The point is, it violated a sense of right and wrong, good and bad. That's what I want to emphasize. Okay? Yes.
Some of the conflicts and challenges that come from the increase in remote warfare, like the kind of video gamification of it.
Okay.
And the loopy moral sense that comes from that.
Right. Okay. Kind of the way the fight changes and the impacts of that. Yeah. Just a couple more. Yes.
Seeing people that aren't necessarily bad people in prison,
Okay.
like detainees.
Oh, okay. So just again, an experiential thing that happened during a deployment where you're looking at something and of course now you're taking that as a violation of somebody else's right and wrong, but yet you're taking that on also. Okay. I don't know why it triggered, but think about suicide and friends that have committed suicide within the military ranks, and the guilt or the should have, would have, could have that goes on in a human mind as a result of that. Yes.
In that same line of thread, and it's
MST.
military sexual trauma.
Yeah, same thing. Yep, I mean, and that's become, I could throw up a bunch of different statistics regarding sexual trauma, sexual assault, and what's happened. Again, that dynamic in the military. And that's got 1,000 other different things that we could talk about regarding. Yeah, so MST, one more. Yes, sir.
Surviving when others don't.
Yep, survivor's guilt. Again, yeah, you pull back the onion layer there, what I could have done, what I should have done, I could have been, whatever, all those different things. So yeah, we got a good list on the big items on the military side. Now, later on, I want to make a list of kind of everyday kind of moral injury type stuff and show how it kind of taps, especially when somebody has experienced these kinds of things, how it taps that, okay? All right. All right, so what happens? What happens when you, and again, I want you to be careful, I don't want you to share your story, but I'm saying you, and if you can't think of you, then think of a person. What happens when you violate your own sense of your own belief of what is right or wrong, or good or bad? What do you feel? Yeah. Shame. Usually I say it's not a quiz question. That was kind of a quiz question, and she got it right, okay? So shame, and what goes along with shame? There's kind of it's synonymous, but guilt. So guilt and shame. A lot of other stuff we could list, but those two primary things, guilt and shame. And again, think of it, you can think of it in terms of your own experience and what you feel guilt and shame about at times, and the people that you deal with, the veterans that you deal with, and we think of this dynamic of guilt and shame. All right, so that's what you feel, these two big things called guilt and shame. And I love this lady, Brené Brown, has a lot of good stuff, and she gives kind of a definition and distinguishes between guilt and shame, okay? And I want to highlight this. So guilt is cognitive dissonance. Guilt says I've done something or failed to do something that is aligned with my values, and it feels awful. And I need to make amends, make a change, and hold myself accountable. I need to fix it. So this is how she kind of defines what guilt is. And then she talks about shame. Says shame, however, is a lot more damaging. Shame says you are a bad person, and as a social species, shame is death. Shame is the fear of being unworthy of love. Unworthy or unable to connect and belong, and the absence of love and connection and belonging as a human being. So shame takes it, I think what she's saying is it takes it a step further in this sense that I can't connect. I don't deserve to connect. I can't connect, and it usually takes this form of other people won't connect with me, or they shouldn't, okay? So I like this kind of distinguishing, between guilt and shame. So you have this dynamic. Big ideas of moral injury as far as what a person experiences. Excuse me, can you give me some water, please? Where was I?
Needed water.
Water, yeah, no, before that. Big ideas of what happens to a person and then experiences moral injury. Again, this isn't necessarily what damages them. What damages them is what? Shame. Well, shame and guilt as a result of violating their own sense of right and wrong, okay? Or what they think is good or bad, okay? We have the big examples. So I just want to show you some little examples, and I'll explain the kind of the snowball effect here in just a second. So we get the big ones, and I just want to kind of talk about everyday examples of moral injury, and then how it taps or why it taps the big stuff. What are everyday examples? I like having fun with this one. Yes?
Double standards.
Double standards, meaning?
Like, I expect this out of you, but, you over here, you have to do something completely different.
Okay, remember, violation of your sense of right and wrong, or your sense of good or bad.
So like, observing that.
Okay, so observing it.
What's my expectation?
Okay, good. How about something else?
Losing your temper at someone you love.
Okay, losing your temper. So you said, what again? Oh, double standards.
Isolation.
Now, I'll get to isolation in a little bit because that's a consequence, okay, or a result. And you just said yelling. Yelling, I'll just say being mean. All right?
Seeing something wrong and not doing anything about it.
Okay, seeing something wrong and not doing something about it. You could kind of flow with the double standards thing, all right? You have a sense of right and wrong, but yet you end up being a coward. I mean, that's the self-talk, right? I didn't do something to make that right, okay? Inaction when you think you should have acted. All right, a couple more. How about lying?
I was just gonna say that.
You guys are all liars, okay? Don't lie to me. You don't think you're liars, but we all lie in all kinds of different ways, okay? Whether it's the things we withhold, or we don't even have to talk about it, right? If you don't agree with me, oh well, all right? You're all liars to some extent, okay? So human beings are lying beings, all right? So liars or lying. How about taking too many breaks, or taking too? None of you are gonna to admit to this, right? But how many of you, don't raise your hand, I was gonna say, how many of you are state workers? I'll make fun. I'm a federal worker, okay? Yeah.
How about just taking advantage?
Okay, yeah, taking advantage of whatever that is. And again, moral injury, it's you, so you know what you're doing. And you're feeling guilt and shame about it, which means you're doing something wrong. More than likely. Okay? Anything else? On everyday examples? Yes.
Not spending enough time with your kids or family.
Kind of a big one. Yeah, not spending enough time with your kids or family. What's that? Addiction. And I was going to do a whole section on addiction here because, again, I think everybody's an addict to something. I know it's kind of funny saying that out loud. It's sad saying that out loud, but everybody's addicted to something. And it has a negative impact in your life, and it's actually tied to everything we're talking about. But that's for the next session, okay? So addictions. So you said that, Luke. Addictions.
Selfishness.
Social media addiction, TV addiction, Netflix addiction, alcohol addiction. I mean, we could just go down the line, right? What'd you say?
Selfishness. I know she said it.
She said it, not me.
She was it.
You're not selfish. All right, that's good enough.
Wasting time would be another.
Yeah, wasting time. I mean, now that I've opened up Pandora's box, you guys can now go, oh yeah. It's not me, but I have some other ones that I could give you, okay? So the snowball effect, right? I have a snowball there rolling, and the snowball effect is, that it gets bigger, right? And what's interesting here with moral injury, and what I'm dealing with from a counselor's perspective all the time, is the fact that this touches on the big stuff, right? I mean, a person can think that they've mastered whatever kind of giant thing that they've experienced in life, right? You've gone through one of these things, especially when it's kind of a long time ago, and maybe you've figured out ways to get through your sense of guilt and shame with the big things, but then guess what happens on a daily basis? You guys ever wonder why you wake up or something happens during the day and you ever wonder why you're just a grump? Or you're mean? Or you're depressed? Whatever your flavor is. I'm just mean, okay? You could ask my kid, or my wife. My flavor is meanness, frustration, and anger. That's my flavor, okay? But you guys all have a different flavor. I mean, have you ever been perplexed? Am I the only one? Like I'm driving down the road and I have a particularly outburst, I'm all alone, but I have an outburst of some kind at somebody on the road, and then I realize, I go, whoa, where'd that come from? What's going on? If that doesn't happen to you, try to get some more self-awareness, okay? Ask your partner, ask your kids, ask them what your flavor is on the negative side, and you're going to learn something, okay? Yeah, liars. You guys are liars. Live in a fake world of...
Why? Do you feel better after that outburst?
No, I did not, because then I had guilt and shame. Violated my sense of right and wrong, good and bad. I'm a pastor, for Pete's sake. I use bad words. No, it doesn't make me feel better. It makes me feel worse. But it touches on other things. The guilt and shame you feel on a regular daily basis taps into the other. I mean, you guys know the word trigger, right? I mean, there's a reason for that word trigger. You're triggered. Some self-awareness. I mean, and we wonder why the veterans are having the issues that they're having, all right? And again, and you wonder why you are having the issues that you are having. Okay, so again, this is applicable to all of you as well. We're not just talking about somebody that really needs it. We're talking both and, all right? Somebody that really needs a lot of help, and I'm talking about you too, all right? Lo and behold, I mean, this just came out this year, okay? I have just the picture of the article here. U.S. Surgeon General calls for action regarding the ongoing epidemic of loneliness and isolation. Of course, I think, are you serious? This is on the heels of COVID, right? To where, you know, obviously a lot of us, I mean, all kinds of research is coming out regarding the impacts to mental health on everybody, from kids to adults, as a result of what took place during COVID. But the reality is, it's kind of what everybody was going through, what was happening already. And I'll show you some of that. By the way, it is a good read. There's a PDF document that you can find. Just Google that title right there. So that's the PDF document. So, and a couple of the quotations from the Surgeon General I have right here. It says, "Our epidemic of loneliness and isolation has been an underappreciated public health crisis that has harmed individual and societal health. Our relationships are a source of healing and well-being, hiding in plain sight." And I just gave the solution to what we're talking about away right here in this quote, but I'll talk more about it here in just a second. So our relationships are a source of healing and well-being, hiding in plain sight, one that can help us live healthier, more fulfilled, and more productive lives. But the dynamic is, people are isolating. And again, we're talking about moral injury, and the result being isolation and loneliness as a result of guilt and shame. I'll talk more about that here in just a second. But there's factors in our society, in our culture, that are facilitating isolation and loneliness. Mainly being what?
Lonely.
Social media? I mean, you guys, I could probably look at, you know, one of your family gatherings or your friend gatherings sometime, but look at a group of these guys, this old. They'll talk for a little bit, and the next thing you know, what are they all doing?
Phones.
To include me. Looking at my phone, checking stocks, looking at the sports, doing whatever. Okay, so there's factors, there's good parts to the social media aspect, but there's factors in our society and our culture that are contributing to that as well. So he's talking about this epidemic of loneliness, of isolation. And again, that isolation is not talking about like literal physical isolation. He's talking about isolation in your head. It's what a person believes, that they're isolated. He goes on, given the significant health consequences of loneliness and isolation, we must prioritize building a social connection the same way we have prioritized other critical public health issues such as tobacco, obesity, and substance use disorders. Together we can build a country that's healthier, more resilient, less lonely, and more connected. One of the main subjects that I'm talking about all the time is the idea of connection. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. I don't watch this show, but I love this quote that I've used for a while, but this quote is, "The only thing keeping you from being happy is the belief that you are alone." I have dealt with many, I wish I would have kept track of the number, but well over 100 people who have struggled with suicide from one extreme to the other. Some that say, hey, it's imminent, to just benign, I think about it. But there is one common factor with everybody that I've talked to. And you know what that factor is? What do they believe? What do they think?
That they're alone.
They think they're alone. They think and the big piece there is they think nobody can understand what they're going through. And they think that they're alone, even though they're in the midst of many people, even when they have a good family and friend group or culture. Now, I used to use these quotes years ago, which maybe I'm doing it to prove that I was right all along. I don't know. But when the Surgeon General, when the guy said that before regarding the health implications to loneliness and isolation, this is fascinating. Social isolation, or the sense that you have nobody with whom you can share private feelings or have close contact, doubles the chances of sickness or death. Isolation itself, in this 1987 report, concluded that it is as significant to mortality rates as smoking, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity, and lack of physical exercise. Isn't that fascinating? So believing that you're alone, believing that you're isolated, is actually deadlier to you than smoking. Which is right here. Indeed, smoking increases mortality risk by a factor of just 1.6, while social isolation does so by a factor of 2, making it a greater health risk. So it's not a mystery as to why there's this research coming out now saying, hey, this is an epidemic. Because it's not just a philosophical idea out there as far as isolation. It has literal medical, physical impacts on people. David Brooks, in his book, How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply, says the same thing. This was a while ago also. There was a crisis, it was before 2013 was his book. There is, not before, it was after. There is a crisis of isolation and a crisis of connection across America. That was ramping up in 2013. Now think of everything we've gone through in the last 3 and 5 years or so, especially with COVID. This is prior to that. And it's still rampant today. 35% of Americans are chronically lonely. The majority of Americans say no one knows them well. And only 8% of Americans report having important conversations with their neighbors. I would argue important conversations at all. And that's coming from a counselor's perspective when I'm talking with people that have been married for decades. And I realize, wow, you guys never talk about kind of important issues. And again, I'm not saying that from a condemning standpoint. We're all guilty of it. Okay, we're all in this to get the same thing together. We struggle in some way, shape, or form with the same thing. This idea of social isolation. So now what? I think a lot of the times when I preach and I teach, people are like, "Geez, Pastor, that's a lot of negative stuff. Yeah, where's the hope? Where's the good stuff?" So now what? I still have some bad stuff right here, though. It says, so moral injury results in guilt and shame, which then results in isolation and loneliness, and it creates this disconnection. Disconnected people. Disconnected, lonely people. And again, Brené Brown says, and I love this quote, it says, by the time you're a social worker for 10 years, what you realize is that connection is why we're here. It's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. This is what it's all about. What we know is that connection, the ability to feel connected, is neurobiologically, that's how we're wired, it's why we're here. This is why I resisted giving a whole bunch of Bible verses after this, all right? Not to preach at you, but to show, at least from the Christian standpoint, that that's what the Bible's talking about all the time too. It's connection. Connection with God, connection with a purpose, connection with other people. And this is from a scientist perspective, not religious perspective, that's saying it's how we're wired, it's how a human is built. I just think that's fascinating. So, I wish I would have gotten a picture. I'm glad I found this picture. This is just some random picture off the internet. This last July 4th, Luke and I were helping out my mother-in-law. It was early in the day, and before festivities happened that night. And we're cutting down this tree and helping her clean up her yard. And all of a sudden, I hear this noise, and there's this veteran coming down the road. Listen, there's nobody on the road. It's not a parade. It's nothing, okay? He's all alone. Not in the bad sense. He's alone by himself on his lawnmower. And he's got an American flag. He was obviously a Vietnam veteran. He had his Cav hat on. He had his Cav spurs on. All by himself, just going down the road. Proud as anybody could be. Wearing what he believes he's connected to. So think of the connection points that veteran was showing right there without me even talking to him. What are some of them? How about the CAVAT? You know what's important to him? What's important about that?
His service.
His service.
Brotherhood, sisterhood.
The brother sisterhood. What he earned, the hard stuff that he went through and he got through. Of course, the American flag, proud of the service that he did, whatever that meant to him. See, that veteran, just by looking at that picture, you can see he's got a sense of what he wants to be connected with. And what the irony is, or not the irony, but what I love about that, especially as we're talking about veterans with issues, from extreme to not extreme. And this dynamic of guilt and shame and social isolation. I don't think I've ever met, I've met a lot of disgruntled veterans, okay? That's what happens as a chaplain. They come and talk to you. I've met a lot of disgruntled people, but I will tell you, 100% of them still desire to be connected in a certain way. They're disgruntled for a reason, but they have a connection. They have a connection to their service, their unit, their experience overseas, to a person, to a first sergeant, to a squad leader. There is somebody or something in their life that they still have a connection to and desire to be connected to, even if they are in extreme isolation and loneliness. It was phenomenal seeing that guy, and I wish I didn't go talk to him. I wish I would have taken a picture of him, because it was just an incredible picture of again, that signified a lot of other things that I could talk about too. Yeah?
Do you believe they still have that connection when it's moments before suicide, or do you think that suicide's
Well,
the result of losing that?
So one of the reasons I'm bringing that up is no, obviously, well, you could say obviously there's not a connection, but there's a desire to. It proves the wired to be connected point.
I see, because suicide is because they've lost, like they don't have the connection, so what's the point to live?
Yeah. I mean, how many? Not that we know that, but I know of people that I have known or have conducted memorial services for, that when they've committed suicide as service members, often they have something on their person of significance that is there in the moment. And again, what is it? They've lost a connection, but it's emphasizing the importance of the connection is my whole point with that. Yeah.
That really points out how, like, loss of relationship, like when relationships split up or people lose their families, like why it's such a big, like, that's a really awesome point that I really love.
And I wish that I could say that I just talked to her, but you just gave away this next point, okay? You're brilliant. So people are wired to be connected. And when I give my talks and teaching regarding suicide prevention and how to help people through that, people want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be understood. They want real, authentic, transparent relationships. You know what turns me off in a relationship? I know that I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody right away. I don't mean like a loving, I mean just like casual, whatever. It could be you and me. You know what turns me off right away? Have any idea? I like authenticity. If I think you're fake, I don't want any part of it. And it's terrible to say, because I'm fake too, all right? But, oh well, I'm a hypocrite. So, I like authenticity, that's the point. I like realness. I like transparency. And I believe that's what people want. There's a reason we're fake. There's a reason people put up a different front than what they really are. And part of it is because they're scared. Part of it is what we're talking about regarding moral injury. They have guilt and shame, and they're afraid that somebody else is going to see them and condemn them. And yeah, I'm going on a tangent. So this connection, this relationship provides purpose and meaning. See, we make things complicated, and it's good. You guys solve really good, hard problems, but here's where we get to the simplicity piece of this. And I love this quote by Dr. Irvin Yalom. He says, "I've always found that responsible neophyte, that's beginner therapists who convey their sense of curiosity and enthusiasm, often form excellent therapeutic relationships and can be as effective as a seasoned professional." And he says this, "It's the relationship that heals." And he says it 3 times. The relationship that heals, it's the relationship that heals, it's my professional rosary. I say that often to students, say other things as well about the way to relate to a patient. Positive, unconditional regard, non-judgmental acceptance, authentic engagement, empathic understanding. And I like doing this in some of my workshops, but I think about, I use the word trust with this, but think about a person that you trust, or have trusted if you don't have one now anymore. Trust is a big thing. So think about a person that you trust, like a name, real face, real name. How would you explain why there's a dynamic of trust there? Can you just use some words? Anybody?
Shared service in the military?
Okay, so shared service,
Yes.
shared like experience,
Vulnerability.
vulnerability,
Respect.
respect, honesty,
Love.
love,
Partnership.
Grace.
partnership,
History.
grace,
Loyal.
History.
history,
Shared trauma.
loyal, shared trauma. Yeah, how many of you, I mean, again, you don't have to raise your hand, but it's interesting you say that, because that's something I haven't talked much in my workshops when we're kind of analyzing this dynamic of trust, but the shared trauma, it makes me smile just thinking about how often I can be connected or trust a person and have not really have a relationship with them, but because I had a shared experience like that with them, there's a bond there that can never be broken. And you're using that dynamic with trust, yeah. Any other words you guys can think of? Honesty, transparency, authenticity, grace, loyalty, shared experience.
Like an openness.
An openness,
To share experiences.
the shared experiences.
I think you have to meet people where they are. Sometimes the trauma is so bad, maybe even on both ends, all you can do is just sit with it.
So the dynamic that you're bringing up is, especially when we're talking about hard issues, you can't fix them, can you? We can fix a job, we can fix a home, we can find some money. I mean, there's things that we can do to help a person, but we're talking about these deep issues. We're talking about moral injury, and especially the related effects of that. There's really only one thing left to help a person with, in which they can really be healed. And it's this idea of just connection. It's relationship. That's why he says what he says. It's the relationship that heals. And I want to even break that down even a little bit more, because you think about relationship, and sorry, I guess I'm kind of your typical man with that. And I've been married for 23 years by the grace of God and the miraculous love of my wife. But you think about relationship, and it's my experience that there's not many people that have a lot of relationships. I mean, deep, extensive relationships with other people. But you can break this down, and especially its applicability in what you guys all do, and your connection point with the veterans that you serve. I'm not trying to tell you to go have a relationship with every one of these people that need help, because that's what's going to heal them. No, the connection point, the relationship that you have with them in your capacity could be all that they need at that particular time. At this point of connection, like the man said in the back there, the shared experience. You might have served in the same unit. I mean, how many times have you come away from a tiny little conversation in which you feel rejuvenated, energized? You just feel different just because you had a good conversation with somebody and you don't even know who they are. That happened to me one time. A lady said hello to me at the bank, one of the bank workers, and she said my name, and something about it, I was having a bad day, and it just made me feel different. I never talked to her again. It's that connection point that can make a difference in whatever way that you serve the veterans that are placed in front of you. They can make a difference with them. Yeah.
That connection point can remind them that they can still get that connection and inspire the hope to keep trying for it.
And your connection may help get them a different connection. I mean, come on, let's admit. So you said in the back that the idea of shared experience or unit. We have to admit let's just pick the Army, all right? The Army creates or exhibits the scenario in which, how do I say this right? If you are wearing a certain patch, you look down on other people and you look up to other people, right? Now, come on.
In-group mentality?
I mean, you could say that about deployment patches. You guys have been in the military. And if you haven't, there can be, regardless of your experience overseas, if you wear a right arm patch, I'm better than him because he didn't wear. I mean, that's the stupid human tricks that we play, right? What's that?
So that's how 101st is.
101st. Let's just name units, right? So we could go down the negative route of that, but the positive route is, again, that's a connection point. It's a pride point. It's a connection point. Excuse me. You can take it negative. Same with Special Forces guys. Rangers. I went through Ranger School, passed by the, whatever, luck of the draw, all right? I was able to serve other folks that wore that patch or had that tab. Whether I was a dirtbag or not, it didn't matter to them. But they had a connection with me that only because I have the tab. Okay? It's that way all throughout the military, in all the different services. That's just the way it is. And I bring that up because of what you just said. Your little connection with them may form the path to a connection that can be even more meaningful or healthy to them.
So you need to find their patch.
Find their patch. Oh, they let you know, right? Yeah.
Well, and if you help them feel good and accepting of themselves, then they're going to treat everybody in their life when they walk away from you differently. And probably those relationships will benefit from them feeling better about themselves.
Just the snowball effect of a healthy person. That's right, yes.
I love how you laws connect you back into Brene Brown, where Brene Brown says, shame is I am wrong. Now here with DeLong, we're having positive unconditional regard towards somebody that thinks they can't be right. So that relationship we have with them is so powerful as we help them move forward.
That's right. That makes me think I am going to go down a tangent here. So I tell this to my congregation all the time. I'll get to you in a second. I tell this to my congregation all the time. I haven't had any outcries and people leaving and craziness or whatever. But my approach, what I believe the Christian scriptures are about is what is, not what should be. I mean, there are a bunch of shoulds, I get that, all right? But my point is, you guys are all experts on what you should be. If you're married, you know that you should be a better husband, and you probably have specific things that are in your head regarding what you can work on, right? I don't need to teach you those. You should on yourself all the time, with the appropriate pun. I don't should on people. And I don't believe, and again, from my perspective of the Christian faith and Scripture, I don't believe that's what Scripture is doing. It's not shoulding on you. It's actually telling you what is or what was, what happened, and then how God dealt with that in the circumstance, all right? So I have the same approach with counseling when I'm talking with people. Rob, you talked about you meeting with the person in jail and their guilt and shame regarding what they did, and they're just dwelling on that all the time, right? So they have a should and a shouldn't in their head all the time. They're plagued by it.
Yeah.
So my connection with people in the relationships that I have is constantly helping try to refocus them on not what should. Sure, you can beat yourself. I don't need to teach you on what you should or shouldn't do necessarily, okay? But let's talk about what is. Let's just connect right now in the present time. So this idea of relationship. Brené Brown, here it is. In order for connection to happen, we have to allow ourselves to be seen. And here she's talking about this idea of authenticity and transparency and honesty. Being willing to let go of who I never caught that until just now. Being willing to let go of who you think you should be in order to be who you are. That's what everybody is plagued by. What you think you should be. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
No problem. Well, you just hit on something that I hadn't really consciously thought about, and I've been working with veterans daily for 12 and a half years at the WorkSource Center. The idea that while you're in the military, if you meet somebody in uniform, I was in the Navy, then I know pretty much what their entire career has been. You know, and you can see, are they petty officer second class? Oh, you're a master chief, like, or captain or whatever it is. Well, so then you transition out of the military, and you have nothing to define you. So that's kind of profound in that team, that environment in the military versus civilian world. Part of that transition that's really tough, I think.
Yeah, it is. I have another hand. All right, I should have asked you, Luke, but this has been profound to me. Hunting is our passion. We eat elk and venison all year long. That's what we love. It's hunting season is what, 2 weeks, Luke? So if you guys want to get a hold of me, I will not be reachable. Even though I just had double knee surgery 5 years, or double knee replacements 5 months ago, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do it, but guess where I'm going to be in 2 weeks? In the woods. So hunting story as it relates to connection. So a number of years back, how many years ago did we go to Idaho? Was it 4? 2020, so almost 4 seasons ago. Idaho State Chaplain invited Luke and I to go elk hunting in Idaho. So we went out there. It was our, I think, first year hunting archery, a totally different thing. And awesome experience, beautiful. It was just north of Boise. Beautiful area, different than Western Washington where we're used to. And we had a great experience. Luke shot his first mule deer with the bow. The scenery was phenomenal. We saw elk, we didn't shoot one. But it was just a phenomenal hunting experience. And I'm thinking, oh, this is neat. You know, we'll go do this again sometime. This is going to expand our repertoire of what we can do with hunting. And at the time, that was 3 years ago. So Luke was only 15 or 14 at the time. So we're heading back home from the hunting experience, and I asked Luke what he thought of our experience in Idaho. And he said, oh, it was okay. He said, but Dad, it was nothing like our elk camp. Nothing like our elk camp. And there wasn't a whole lot more words there. I think he might have said something, you know, Dan wasn't there, Rob wasn't there. It wasn't the same sitting around the fire at night, but it just was profound to me because what was important to him wasn't the neat actual hunting. That's always important. The actual, you know, hunt of the animal and harvesting of the animal. But what was impactful to him as a teenage boy was the fact that he had a connection with other people in that elk camp that was of utmost importance to him. And it was the connection that mattered. It was the connection that stood out in his head as that's what was meaningful. To a 15-year-old boy, sorry, I'm making fun of you a little bit, but to a kid that hasn't even heard much of these concepts, he just verbalized to me that the connection with those other guys and people in camp was what was meaningful to him. And it was profound. So I just leave you with this. How do you feel connected? And I say this kind of pointing the arrow at you now, because when you can do this, you can do this for other people. When you're aware of this in your life, then you can be aware of it in the lives of other people. So how do you feel connected? When do you feel connected? And who are you connected with? See, when you're actively aware of that yourself, you can't connect with everybody, but especially in the jobs and the things that you do, aware of the fact that that person, that man or woman that's sitting in front of you, their greatest desire truly is, guess what? It's to be connected with something and with somebody. And that might, the big something in somebody might not be you, but it could be for 5 minutes. In which then you're able to give them, and especially in dealing with suicide, you know, one of the things that I do in suicide instruction, I'm losing my train of thought with one of the main courses that the military uses right now? Anybody have it right off the top of your head? Assist. It's phenomenal, okay? So assist training, applied suicide intervention skills training, is this, again, this idea of how do I keep somebody alive for 5 more minutes, 1 more hour, for 1 more day. So I'm not trying to fix everything. You're a connection point for that person, maybe for only 5 minutes, but it could dramatically change their life, and they might not even remember who you are. Pretty simplistic, isn't it? That is my presentation. I guess at this point I'll just open it up for, I mean, if there's any other comment. Yeah, you guys can get a hold of me. I have my contact information up there on purpose. If you have a group or something that I'd love to come speak to your group and talk about these things even more, so you can reach out to me. Just know that you will not get a reply in the next month. Maybe not till December, because I got daughters that are hunting during modern rifle. Yes, go.
I think it's really interesting what you said at the end. I just stumbled across this the other day. It said the opposite of triggers are glimmers. And to be really cognizant of glimmers, of those moments in the bank that you're talking about, that you're making connection, and point that out to the people you're serving. You know, and to look for those. We're really cognizant of triggers, but are we cognizant of those glimmers and when you make those glimmers?
Yeah, it's interesting because, yeah, we're all scared of triggers, right? So we're like tripped up by the triggers, but why not look for the glimmers? Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, you guys have, I mean, any questions or anything else you guys want to tease out a little bit, or? Yeah.
So prayer, because actually, you know, if somebody prays for me, it's just so personal, you know, if they're doing it right there with you. And I've actually done that with a few of my clients. And there is such a connection with that client still. It's there. And you can't do it with everybody because not everybody's in that place. But it can be just that glimmer.
Yeah, she just said, talking about prayer. And again, there's different connection points with everybody. And it really doesn't take a whole lot of effort to try to listen to a person and get to know them for just a minute to see what could be their connection piece. With veterans, it's easy. They're dying to tell you what unit they're from, or what patch they wore, or what deployment they went on. And if you think they aren't, what are they complaining about? Their complaint is telling you what's important to them. Yes, sir.
There are numerous homeless encampments, and then once in a while you see people that are homeless in what looks like isolation. And so this whole subject matter you've been dealing with about connectivity just really strikes me that maybe part of our response to the homelessness and homeless veterans is to do a better job of trying to connect.
Yeah.
Or make connections.
Right? Yeah, we didn't even go down the kind of the day you bring up homelessness and from Luke said addictions, but you talk about alcohol, the self-treatment that veterans do, from alcohol to drugs to you name it. That just perpetuates and does the snowball effect with the guilt and shame, because for most people that's again violating your own sense of right and wrong. You know when you've had too many drinks. You know you're taking drugs. And sure, maybe somebody has justified or rationalized why they do it, but I guarantee you, if you really sat down with them, and if they were ever to be honest with you, they would say, yeah, I know that what I'm doing, it's violating my own sense of right and wrong. And it's part of why they continue to do it, to cover the guilt and the shame, and to remain isolated, disconnected. And again, it just perpetuates that dynamic. Yeah, anybody else? Yeah, Gary.
I know a lot of folks might utilize humor to kind of shield behind. Do you have any tips about maybe being able to kind of break some of those walls to get those connections?
Well, the awkwardness about humans, I mean, you professional counselors that are in here, I mean, what you have to learn as a counselor is we try to force connection. You can't force connection. You can sit and listen. you can sit and try to be with a person. I mean, the concept of being with somebody in their despair, even, because again, especially if you've ever sat across from somebody that is in despair, that is in kind of that bad moment, I mean, you can't bring them out of it. I mean, you want to, and you're desperately trying to, but the more you try to, usually they're pushing you away even more. I guess the way I'll say that. So when I have had bad times in my life, and I've had a group of special friends that I'm able to go be honest with, to talk to them about it, I will tell you one thing. If I were to go to you, if you were one of those guys, and say, hey, Gary, I'm struggling with this. This is what's going on right now. And you try to start to teach me on how to get out of it, I will close off right away and say, Gary, so it doesn't matter if you start joking with, I mean, maybe you and I have some special connection that you know, humor can.
More so, if you're the one that's going through something as well, but maybe you're utilizing humor to not kind of show your real self, so not hearing you and making light of it, but more so seeing, maybe you might see someone who's in despair, but you're kind of laughing about the pain in people. And so, and it seems like everyone's boat has so much going on, or everyone's going through their own stuff, if you will. So it seems like, as you said, maybe they have shame with burdening folks with it. And so just kind of wondering, it seems like a lot of people that will use kind of that humor and kind of hide behind that humor, but you can kind of see maybe that they're crying behind the humor.
Oh yeah, it could be.
But they seem to get even more defensive, like you said. It's almost like the show of showing the humor. So just kind of seeing what tips or experience kind of from that.
Well, that's why I left you with the last, you know, those three questions, because, you know, I know early on in my counseling career, I was immediately going to the fix-it, trying to fix all the issues, and that didn't hardly ever work. And it wasn't until I learned what is it like to sit with somebody and listen and be there, and how do you connect with a person? You can't connect with everybody, you can't. But I'll tell you what, if you know how you're connected with somebody, if you know what that's like, how do you feel connected? When do you feel connected? Who do you feel connected with? What's that like? Then it's easier to go, okay, wait a minute, I know what I don't like. I want authenticity, I want transparency, and you know, think about it, for a veteran to be vulnerable to somebody that they don't know, to pour out their guts with what's going on, that's a big deal. So how do you just connect with them? Be with them. I mean, that's part of what I do with my job. You sit with people in their sorrow. And knowing that, one, it's only another human connection that can help heal. And I also believe that, well, again, I'll go down a preaching tangent here in a second.
I'm just gonna say that one of the things that helps me when people are like do that and like kind of joke around if they're people I care about and I love and they're hurting and I need help, is I authentically share how, like, if they're like, oh, I'm so whatever, they'll like talk themselves down and they're like, I'm just being stupid or whatever, and then I tell them what I authentically and genuinely believe about them. I don't think you're stupid. I think you're stupid. And sometimes, or a thing that's worked for me is I'll make jokes about things, and then somebody will say, "Wow, that's really sad. I'm really sorry that you're going through that." And that like really changes and shifts things around in people. When you take that first step of being vulnerable and authentic, whatever they're presenting.
Yeah, it's different. We just, you develop what your true self is, and you're trying to connect with people. I know I have the advantage of being a chaplain that often people come to me and they're in the middle of something bad. So if they try to joke around with me, I just, you know, I go, that's a pretty funny joke, but you're going through some rough stuff right now. That's tough. I know if I'd be going through that, I don't know what I'd be thinking right now. You know, so just try to state what's going on right now. What do you want to talk about? Yes, sir.
I just